All right, welcome back. My name is Chris Sachinelli. I build, buy, and sell simple, profitable businesses every single day. And today we're going to talk about a super simple blueprint to get on top of your finances and build out a personal financial statement as an investorpreneur, right? When we're talking about investorpreneurship, we're talking about a less risky approach to being an entrepreneur. Oftentimes the risk comes into the finances. So having a super simple blueprint or a super simple strategy to be able to get on top of your finances and make good, timely decisions, especially around bootstrapping your business and what types of operating budgets you have, or what money you can actually put to work or take, risks with, is pretty critically important. Right, we're heading into some pretty uncertain times, especially for entrepreneurs, for investors as well. And again, investopreneurship, it's taking the discipline and risk aversion of an investor and the passion and grit of an entrepreneur, best of both worlds, and you build your business, right? So what I want to do is actually go ahead and share my screen. And in sharing my screen, I'd like to talk you through this super simple blueprint that you can actually put to work inside of your day-to-day, and in doing so, potentially have a less risky path forward in terms of building your business, right? This is super simple. And again, simple is not always easy, but simple oftentimes works. Simple oftentimes works way better than complicated or complex. So this is a super simple framework that we're going to talk through. And the good thing about it, and the good thing about simple, is you can actually do it, right? Sometimes that's why simple works best, is oftentimes, especially as busy professionals, we sometimes just put things to the side that we feel like we should do, but they're not a priority. So they oftentimes maybe don't get done. And all we need to do at the end of the day is just get it done, right? Just cross things off the list and move the ball down the field. So we like to design for simple, because oftentimes when we can design for simple, it gets utilized, and it's a point of utilization where there's actually value, right? So this is not intended to be anything complicated. I'm not going to be going through anything that's super game changing, or, we're not solving the mysteries of the universe with this one, but it is very, very practical. And we're trying to condense it and consolidate it into a super simple format that literally anybody can and should follow, right? So the first thing that we're doing here, scope wise, we just want to build a personal financial statement. And when we're talking about a personal financial statement, what we're really talking about is understanding our finances. We want to understand the amount of money that's coming in. We want to understand the amount of money that's going out. And we want to understand what's left over after the two of those things happen, right? And by understanding the balance there, what we can do is put some simple goals in place. And by understanding where we're at with those goals, we can actually put some action plans, some strategies and tactics in place to be able to get ourselves to what we call the freedom number, the point in time in which, as an investorpreneur, on this journey of go get a job, get somebody else to pay you to get experience, take all that experience, some of that pay, go build an asset on the side, get your asset to match your income, and then level up. The freedom number is the point in time in which, well, the only way you can level up is through yourself, right? Your own portfolio of assets have accumulated enough passive income and value that there's nobody else that could go out there and employ you at better terms, right? So that's where we're trying to get to. And this is a very practical approach to be able to pursue that journey. So the first things first, I use this app and this on the sheet, being mint.com. There's a ton of personal finance apps out there now. There's a lot of like banking apps as well. I went with Mint just to keep it simple. They've been around forever. I mean, they're like an Intuit company, so they're also pretty stabilized. They've been pretty much like first to market to a certain extent in terms of like personal financing and budgeting. I know that there's a lot out there that do a much better job, and I know that Mint doesn't always get the best of raps, but it gets the job done. And again, all we're trying to do here is keep it simple. So when we're talking about personal finance apps, it's, you just want some sort of system where you could plug in all of your financial data points, your bank accounts, your credit cards, your bills, etc., and just have it simply come in, right? You want a tool that's going to do the blocking and tackling, import your transactions, so that then all you have to do is go to the step 2 and actually categorize your transactions, right? So the first step is you're going to set up an account. You're going to integrate all of your banking information, and then it's going to pull in your transactions. Once it pulls in your transactions, you're going to go through and you're going to categorize your transactions. And what you're trying to categorize it by is your personal financial statement. So you want to know if there's income coming in. Where's the income coming from? Is it coming from my W-2 employment, right? Like being an employee somewhere, payroll? Is it coming from a 1099 contract that I have, where I'm a contractor with a company, maybe consulting, something like that? Is it coming from my assets, meaning, is it a disbursement from a business that I own, or maybe real estate or something like that, right? You want to, be able to categorize everything appropriately, so that you can then have a very clear picture of your personal financial statement, right? Same thing on the expenses. You're going to literally want to go through line by line and categorize what the expense is and what's it's related to. And my preference, I know folks can get pretty granular with this type of stuff, but the goal here is to do it, set it up, and then stick with it over a long period of time, hopefully forever, for the rest of your life, right? So again, keep it simple. And I really personally just kind of lean into a keep it simple, generic type of categorization type of approach. If you want to go more granular and really get line itemed into it, like very specific, that's perfectly okay. I just find that it's easier and faster, and more most importantly for me, at least, it's the fast, the speed, right? I know that if I could just sit down on my couch and just like really quickly go through and categorize transactions, because I only have a handful of buckets to put things into, I'm more likely to do it and do it fast, and then I stay on top of it pretty quick and easy. But feel free to categorize your transactions however you want. The third step is we're going to balance our budget. Fourth step is we're going to set simple goals. And then the fifth step is we're going to execute on our Investopreneur's journey, right? So what I want to pay some time to and focus on is the middle of the screen, right? So our personal financial statement. When we talk about the personal financial statement, you should think of yourself just like an entity, right? So as Investorpreneurs, we're building businesses, right? We're in this game of building and collecting businesses. So we should be pretty familiar with a P&L, right? P&L being the revenue coming in minus the expenses going out, which leaves us with, net operating income or EBITDA, whatever it is that we want to, our profit, right? How much is left over after it's all said and done. When you're an individual, when you're an investorpreneur, I really want to get us into this frame of mind of treating ourselves like a business, like an entity, right? And it's even cool. It's, you could do it for yourself individually. It's equally as cool if you are in a family situation, you're married and you have maybe kiddos, right? And you have a household. I think it's super duper cool to think of your household as a corporation, right? Take your last name, Sachinelli Inc., right? And treat it like a balance sheet and a P&L of a corporation, and manage your household appropriately. Like, we're investorpreneurs at the end of the day. It's where our passion is. And there should be no difference in terms of applying it to our business versus our personal selves, right? Change your perspective, you change your approach. So when I'm looking at the revenue, I do definitely break it down though by the different categories or flows of income, right? So you have your initial income being your W-2 employment. And this W-2 employment, it could be, hopefully payroll that you're on with another business, right? Because as an investorpreneur, again, we're going out and getting a job, get somebody to pay you to get experience, take all that experience, some of that pay, go build your asset on the side, right? Get your asset to match your income and then go level up. So hopefully this W-2 is employment payroll coming in from another job in which you have another employer. But if you, depending on where you are in your journey, you may be on payroll of your own business at this point, right? So that's totally cool as well. You just want to categorize it, right? So as revenue's coming in, you want to know where it's coming from so that you can kind of take a step back and start to pay attention to it and kind of analyze it and then optimize it over time, right? So you want your W-2 employment, any 1099 contractor employment, right? So if you're out there advising, you're doing consultancy work, you're doing any sort of like freelancing or side hustle work, and you're getting paid as a 1099 contract or employment, line item that stuff out, right? If you're doing this through a number of different things, feel free in this situation to kind of line item out each type of contract that you're in, so you can kind of pay attention to where the flows and where the streams are, and where you're spending your time, and hopefully you can optimize to where it's the best. Your assets are going to be, this is going to be where your business income comes in. It's going to be anything. An asset is anything in which you've invested in, that once you've either built it or bought it, it then continues to pay you. Right. And ideally, it's paying you on a more of a passive basis than an active basis. And our whole goal with Investopreneurship is to build up as many passive assets as we possibly can that can then compound over time. And when we look at assets, what we're trying to do is accumulation of appreciation, right? So we want things that appreciate in value, right? If it's appreciating in value, it's an asset, right? But we also want to be able to tap into the depreciation if we can, because that's going to reduce our overall tax liabilities, and it's going to put us in a better overall situation. And we want cash flow, right? So we want money that's coming out of it. That's, we want to get paid to own these things, right? And then off of that as well, you're going to then accumulate all of these things. You're going to add all of these things up, and then that's going to get your total income, right? So when you're looking at this, that's going to be everything that you're making, right? So you're splitting out all of these different things in which you're doing, and then you're adding them together. That's going to be your total income. That's how much money you have coming in. You're going to then do the same thing with your expenses. So into the expenses, I keep it simple. So I break things down like shelter, right? Like I pretty much try to keep it simple to like the basic necessities of what somebody needs to live and exist, and then like categorize everything into those buckets. Again, you can literally do it however you want. You could get as granular as you want or not. The important thing is that you're just doing it. And then once you do it, you have a good picture of what it is. And then we can go forward and actually apply it to make good timely decisions in our financial life, right? So on expenses, I got shelter, vehicle, health, fun, and subscriptions. Those are the buckets that I personally use. And if it falls into a category of one of those, that's where I put it. And then what it's allowing me to do is then total up my expenses, and then I can see what my NOI is. And the way that I find out what my net operating income, or like what my operating profit is, all you do is you take your total income and you minus your expenses, total expenses. And if the number is positive, that means that you're making more money than you're spending. If it's negative, that means you immediately and aggressively have to change some things. And when the cool thing about this, and the cool thing about paying attention to it, I mean, it's the same thing in your business, right? So a lot of the things that we're talking about here are just keep it simple, practical approaches, and it carries over into just running a good business as well. But in this conversation, we're talking about it for ourselves. And oftentimes, for whatever reason, especially as investpreneurs, especially as bootstrapping entrepreneurs, even as venture-backed companies, what we find and observations we make is entrepreneurs oftentimes will do this type of stuff for our businesses. We as entrepreneurs will do this for our businesses. And then sometimes we'll do everything with so much care and passion for the business that we oftentimes put ourselves, to the bottom of the list, and we won't do it for ourselves. And if you're in a bootstrapping situation, that could be extremely dangerous, right? You really need to be able to manage your budgets appropriately. Right? You're running a profitable business, a profit-first company. So you really need to know where things are, and you need to be able to pay attention to things. And then you need to know what levers you can pull to be able to make any adjustments that you need to in a timely manner, right? So that's going to be your NOI. We're not done there, right? Because the next thing that we want to do is pay attention to our entire financial picture. And when you're looking at just revenue minus expenses, that's just like day-to-day living. That's like get by living. And we're not get by type of people. We want to optimize, right? So we want to optimize not only for the short term, but for the long term. So when we're talking about optimization, we want to go over here to this top right corner. We want to also factor in our investment goals, Because when we're talking about optimizing for the long term, things like pensions are long gone. Social Security is probably going to be a thing of the past, right? We're going to be individuals that need to kind of make sure that we can provide for ourselves in terms of retirement in the very long term. And then in the immediate terms, we need to be in a situation where we can actually, have enough free cash flow to be able to invest into assets. And ideally, those assets hopefully become the replacement for our income. And that's how we can retire faster and get financial freedom quicker, right? So that's what we're trying to do here. And it's kind of the game that we're working this through. And the faster that folks can look at this stuff as a game, in a sense, and just see the pieces on the board and start to maneuver pieces and make, again, good timely decisions to be able to move the ball down the field or make maneuverings that make sense and kind of get you to where you want to be, win the game, the funner this becomes realistically. So in terms of our investment goals, we have different categories of investment goals, and it's really important that you kind of pay attention to the categories and you chip away at each of the categories. So the first category investment goal is just going to be a short-term rainy day fund, right? This is going to be a set amount of money that you put aside in something that is liquid, right? That you can have access to in the case of an emergency. And in most situations, when you're talking to or you're listening to other financial podcasts or things like that, they're going to say anywhere from 3 to 6 months. As a bootstrapping entrepreneur, as an investorpreneur, I highly recommend that you have anywhere from 12 months to 36 months put aside inside of your rainy day fund. And when I say 12 to 36 months, what I mean is you take your total expenses, right? Go back to your personal financial statement, take your total expenses, multiply it out by 12, multiply it out by 24, multiply it out by 36, whatever you want in terms of your risk profile. The longer the runway there, the lower your overall life risk as an investorpreneur. Shorter the runway, higher your risk. So pay attention to whatever your personal risk profile is and take that number, 12 months, and multiply it out by your total expenses. And that's going to be what you need to be putting away in your rainy day fund. And the way that you do that is you get your revenue to be greater than your expenses in your personal financial statement. And anything that's left over immediately goes into that rainy day fund until it's full. That's step number one. You have to get that done, right? That's going to create your true cash cushion. Your next goal is going to be your long-term retirement. What we want to do I'm not going to go into like retirement plans or like how to set up a retirement plan or what that should look like. That's definitely something you want to talk to your financial advisor about, a professional here. I'm not going to make any sort of investment suggestions or advice on this video, but what I do want to acknowledge is that you should have a long-term retirement plan in place. And then you should have a metric-based investment schedule where you're meeting it, meaning what your retirement plan is, how much you need to contribute to it to be able to make it to that retirement plan. And you're in a situation where you're doing that in a repetitious cadence, a very healthy cadence, right? Weekly, monthly, quarterly, whatever it may be. You want to, again, make sure that your NOI is high enough where you can meet those obligations. And I highly suggest you do it either on a weekly or a monthly basis, because the quicker and the sooner, especially when it comes to balancing budgets and things like this, the quicker the time period, the higher the accountability, right? So if I know every week I have to come up with this money, then I'm not in a situation where I'm like, getting a little bit more lackadaisical and maybe, making an expense purchase or something like that I'm like, oh, I could make up for this next week, something like that, right? If I know every week I have to do something, shorter the time period, the more accountable I'm going to be, right? It's the same as when we're bootstrapping our businesses and we're like, every day I have to make X amount of dollars. Every day I have to make $300. Every day I have to make $500. Every week I have to make $1,500, whatever it is, right? When we approach things, we're trying to approach it in the shorter period of time, because the shorter the period of time, especially when it comes to financials, the higher the overall accountability. And the more the investor side of our risk aversion and making good disciplined decisions kicks in of the investopreneurship. So that's the long term. And then the midterm is going to be large purchases. That's going to be like if you are in a situation where you know you have to buy a house or you're going to have a new car come up, like some sort of large ticket item, like large purchase, you're getting married, whatever the case may be. You want to be planning for that. You want to be putting money away for that. And you want to have a goal associated with that. That definitely falls in after your short-term rainy day fund. That's number one priority. And your retirement, which is number two. That's when you start to plan for these midterm purchases. Once you have one and two, short-term and long-term, like budgeted out, and you're covering those, right? You're making those investment schedules. That's when you can actually plan to make these midterm purchases, large purchases, and you can, set a time in the future of when that's going to happen. Then you can back into how much do you need to save in order to be able to do it. And you can actually make these purchases in a very risk mitigated and responsible manner, right? So those become your investment goals. Those are your core investment goals. Next, after you tackle your investment goals, which are really kind of more of just like your life obligations, that's when you can get into your bootstrapping budget, right? So you're going to subtract your investment goals from your NOI, and that's going to be, what you're pretty much left with is your bootstrapping budget. And when you're, working with your bootstrapping budget, what you're really trying to understand is like, what business am I intending to build? What do I need to be able to build that business? And then does my bootstrapping budget cover that? If it does, awesome, move forward. If it doesn't, refine the business until the point that it does, or go back and balance your budget again, right? And what we're trying to do in this entire approach is to be able to get you into a position where your finances cover all of your life obligations, and it allows you the freedom to be able to pursue your business on the side without taking unnecessary life risks, right? And you're either going to simplify again the business, or you're going to optimize your budget, right? And it's always the same things. And you can either be simplifying the business, or you could be simplifying your life, right? It's always a matter of simplification, and it's just a matter of preference of where you want to apply that. So when we're looking at this, the goals, the breakdown of goals, kind of keep it super simple. The byproduct of doing this exercise, it puts us in a framework where we have the information. Once you have the information, then you need to apply the information, right? So it's like getting information to then be able to make good, timely decisions to then execute, right? That's like what we're always after here is get good information, make good, timely decisions, execute, move things forward, keep moving it down the field, right? That is investopreneurship. So in this situation, we want to leave with three very, very clear goals. And the three goals that we're going to execute into are the following. The first goal is reducing your expenses. And the goal around reducing your expenses is you want to be able to reduce your expenses low enough where you have a positive NOI, right? Where you're actually able to have revenue minus expenses, and there's enough money left over where there's a positive NOI where you can start leveraging into a cash cushion to set up your rainy day fund, right? That's your step number one. If you're not in that situation, then what you do is you pull the lever of reducing expenses. And the reason why, there's a why behind it, right? Always follow the why, find the why, and then pursue it. The why behind reducing expenses first is it is an immediate lever to pull, right? I can immediately go into my balance sheet and look at my operational expenses and figure out things that I can cut. And there's always fat to trim, right? So that's why we want to go after the expenses first. It's not because we want to push folks to live, a Spartan lifestyle and, not have nice things and things like that. It's because, just practically speaking, if you're in a situation where you're underwater, meaning your expenses are already higher than your revenue, it is going to be far faster for you to plug the holes and stop the leaking by cutting expenses. You could immediately do it for an immediate return, as opposed to going out and trying to grow your income, right? So that's your first step, is to reduce your expenses. The second goal is to increase your income high enough to create the cash cushion. And you're going to do that to make it faster, right? So your first goal is just to be able to start chipping away at stuff. You want to have enough of a positive NOI to start getting your investment goals settled. The next goal is you want to amplify your income in order to make your investment goals and your bootstrapping budget happen faster, have a higher velocity. What I mean here, as an example, say I cut all my expenses here, and right now I have a net operating income of $1 a month, right? It is going to take me a very long time to take that $1 and get my rainy day fund set up, right? If that's the case, and I've cut all of my expenses, then my only other option is to, in order to speed up the amount of time it's going to take me to set up my rainy day fund, do my retirement goals, midterm purchases, etc. The only other option that I have to make it faster, if I've already reduced my expenses, is to increase my income, right? So the goal number 2 is to increase your income so you can increase the velocity of accomplishing your goals, right? Of hitting your investment goals. The way in which we suggest you do that is to position yourself by selling high dollar services, exchanging your time for high dollar amounts by selling services, right? That's where the 1099 employment comes in. It is a lot easier for you to go out and sell services, to find somebody who's willing to pay you as a 1099 contractor and become a consultant or an advisor in the business and sell a high dollar amount services, right? Command a higher price premium for your time, right? Than it is to go out and build a business, right? So this is just a very simple, practical approach for an investor to grow revenue. Again, it's just easier this way. It's easier, it's faster, there's better leverage, there's better money dollar leverage into it faster for speed and velocity, right? To increase your income. There's better overall leverage, life leverage in creating assets. But right now, our job is just to grow income. So what we want to do is go out and sell services at a premium, exchange our time for money. And because our time is expensive and valuable to us as entrepreneurs, we want to charge a premium for that. So that's when you're going to go out and sell yourself and become a 1099 employment contractor, right? And ideally, this is what we don't want to do, is like go out and do general services, right? So like you can go drive Uber and get paid as a contractor to drive Uber, or you can get more specialized into your services and sell graphic design or video editing or FP&A, financial planning and analysis consulting, right? The more niched and more valuable that you can get specialized with the services in which you can provide, the more premium you're going to be able to get for that, command for it in the market, and the better dollar amount you're going to get, better leverage on your time for money, right? So what I want you to do is niche in and optimize and charge and figure out the highest dollar, not just any dollar. I want you to figure out the highest dollar premium that you can get in exchange for the time. That's your second goal. And your goal is to optimize for revenue in this situation. So now you have already optimized for expenses. Now you've optimized for revenue. That's going to get you your best possible NOI, which is, again, your revenue minus your expense. That's how much money you have. And you want to now be in a situation where you're covering your investment goals and you're getting into your bootstrapping budget. And that brings you to your third goal, which is to now build a super simple bootstrapping business, right? Business as a bootstrapper, to match, with the goal being simple, right? Again, your goal is to match your income, right? Sometimes folks will approach this and say, I want to match my expenses. And that's perfectly okay as well, right? If you want to get your bootstrapping income to match your expense, and that puts you in a feeling of financial freedom or independence, that's okay as an initial goal. I highly suggest that you get your assets to match your income and then go level up, right? So you're going to want, in this situation, if you're doing a lot of 1099 work, what you're going to want to do is get your assets to match your 1099 work, right? So that way you can stop doing the 1099 work. Or you're going to want to get, if you're not doing as much 1099 work, you're going to want your assets to then match your W-2, right? So look at this revenue tier and just always try to level up the ladder, right? First, you're trying to get your assets to take away your 1099 work, so you're not you're not trading your time for income, right? And then you want to get your assets to match your W-2 work, so that you can have that freedom where you no longer have to have a job, right? So it's super, super practical in terms of the ways that you're leveling up. And the goal is to build simple assets that fall within your bootstrapping budget, right? That you can then leverage, right? So you want assets that you can leverage where you're not changing time for money, but you're building assets that then give you money and cash flow. And you want them to be very, kind of simple, especially at first, especially as you're getting going. So like a course, for example, is a great initial simple asset, right? Take whatever you're selling as your consulting services, your 1099 employment, build a course around it, sell the course, right? No longer sell the service, sell the course, right? That's like a very simple example of a practical approach to do this and execute into this, right? Once you do that though, the whole goal is to then repeat, right? So you want to get your assets to match your income and then repeat the process, and keep leveling up. Now, this is super practical. This is super simple. Absolutely everybody can do this. There's no reason why you can't. And the good news is this doesn't take a lot of time. The most time that you're going to find investing into this is going to be the first time when you're setting it up. And then if you just hold yourself accountable, you can do it on a weekly basis. You can do it on a monthly basis. I prefer, again, the shorter the period of time, the higher the accountability. You don't necessarily have to do this on a daily basis, but if you're really motivated and super hungry to be an investor, and maybe you're in a situation where you're clearing up some financial mishaps that you may have, and you're really just kind of getting yourself back going, that's when I would say, like, be hyper aggressive with it, right? Time value money, do it faster, do it more accountable. Oftentimes what we'll see is the more that we have, sometimes the lazier we get with this stuff. So I just don't want you to get to a point where you're lazy, where you're doing it on a quarterly basis or an annual basis. Like, always keep it monthly or less, right? Do it weekly, monthly, bi-weekly, whatever the case is. That would be my ask of you. The good news is, again, once you invest in setting this up once and it's done and the framework's kind of there, now you're just using it and applying it. To keep it updated is pretty minimal. It's a very minimal amount of investment, especially if you are doing it on a weekly basis and you don't have to sit down and go through a whole month's worth of transactions. Another value proposition of doing it sooner rather than later. And then to use it and to keep applying these goals and to keep cycling through the repetitious cycle. That's a very virtuous, repetitious cycle to be able to build and accumulate assets. Hyper practical, and it's a great approach to be able to be a successful entrepreneur. All right, hopefully this was valuable for you, and if you were able to use it and put it to good use, let us know, right? You can also join us in the community. We have Startup Exchange, where we build, buy, and sell together. We have our newsletters where we actually put information out in terms of the Investorpreneur journey. So you have the Investorpreneur newsletter. We have our podcast. It's the Capital Call, right? So there's definitely places that we're building in order to be able to help you support this journey. Definitely get in contact with us and share how it's going in the comments below. And please like this if you found this to be valuable information, and subscribe to the channel if you want more. Appreciate you for joining us. Talk to you soon.